Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to my virtual talk. My dearest friend, John and Abigail Adams Love During War and Peace. I'm Hannah Carlson, and this talk is based on my book, John Adams, The Voice Heard Round the World. And it highlights the close, loving relationship between John and Abigail, including their deep love for family and young America. After this dramatic story, I've selected some of their intimate letters to read aloud to you. My colleague and friend, Don Broderick, will read John's letters and I'll read Abigail's. After the talk, you can email me with any questions or comments at carlson@schoolmasterpress.com. And the book is available on Amazon and on my website, www.schoolmasterpress.com. Well, here we go. Where would America be without John and Abigail Adams? This is the essential chapter in the Adams story that tells of vision and courage in making the Declaration of Independence happen. Marked for hanging by King George III, Adams risked his life to secure independence forever for America. Aided by the strong support of his wife, Adams spoke up in the Continental Congress and in Europe with a voice heard round the world. Is there a backstory to this book? Well, yes. Briefly, this exciting story unfolded step by step with the Boston Landmarks Orchestra team, aiming to bring history to life through the arts for all ages. The orchestra would perform a new symphony composed specifically for the Adams story. A richly illustrated book would go hand in hand with the music and be recorded on CDs. Live performances for Boston audiences of 15,000 would bring the story to the public on summer evenings. Let me introduce you to some of our team dedicated to this ambitious project. Charles Ansbacher founded the Boston Landmarks Orchestra in 2001 as an extension of his desire to make the arts part of people's lives, regardless of their wealth or education. The orchestra performed in such historically important settings as the USS Constitution Pier, Old North Church, Fenway Park, and other landmark locations. Since 2007, its principal home has been the Hatch Memorial Shell on the Charles River. The White House once called Ansbacher the unofficial ambassador of America's music. It was an honor when he asked me to write the story about the Adams National Historical Park in Quincy. After research, interviews, field trips, and editing the story, a composer was selected. Anthony DiLorenzo is an Emmy award-winning composer and trumpeter from LA. He grew up and went to school in the Boston area. We met at a sunny California cafe to talk about the vision of the new symphony. While I don't have a musical background, we agreed that there would be a balance between text and musical interludes and a repeated John Adams theme. After months of revisions, the symphony was finished and we needed a narrator for the recording. David McCullough is twice winner of the Pulitzer Prize, twice winner of the National Book Award, and received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He's a host of many history programs on television, an editor, essayist, teacher, and lecturer. McCullough is a national treasure, working for decades to bring American stories to readers. It was a privilege to work with him on the recording of the book at Martha's Vineyard TV studios. His reading of John Quincy Adams' word as narrator was perfect. Others on our team were the Willard E. Smucker Foundation, the Society of the Cincinnati, and the Charles Francis Adams Foundation. They funded the production of the CD and book, as well as its distribution to more than 600 libraries in Massachusetts. Now, John Quincy Adams will tell you a story about his parents.
Hello, my fellow patriots. I'm John Quincy Adams, oldest son of Abigail and John Adams, the second President of the United States. I would like to tell you of my parents' part in winning America's independence from Great Britain. My story comes from their letters and through my eyes as a young boy.
John and Abigail exchanged more than 1,100 letters, starting with their courtship in 1762 and continuing throughout John's political career until 1801. They contain heartfelt emotions, fear for each other's safety, daily life at the farm, vision for the new country, hardships during the war, and much more. They were often addressed to my dearest friend and signed, "I am yours, ever affectionate."
You have heard of Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, and you know of General George Washington, our first president. Well, there is one man, perhaps more than any other, who argued, wrote, and spoke up to help America become a new nation. He was John Adams.
The colonists shared much in common with England, the same language, customs, literature, and family roots. Yet, in 1776, unity was ended for many after years of taxes and lack of representatives in the Parliament. 1/3 of the colonists were Tories, loyal to King George. 1/3 were the true blue, willing to fight for freedom and gain representation in government. And the remaining third were the timid, undecided whether to be a Tory or a rebel. Those who picked up their pitchforks and muskets to fight were ready to give their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. 4 years later, as a committee of one, Adams wrote the state constitution for Massachusetts, the first for any state. At age 44, Adams essentially composed the entire thing in about a month, drawing on his knowledge of political philosophy. It was a model for our U.S. Constitution, designed with 3 branches of government and protection of individual liberties. Today, the Massachusetts Constitution is the oldest functioning written constitution in the world.
John Adams fought not on the battlefields, but by speaking up for America's independence in Congress and overseas. In 1775, Great Britain, with the largest army and navy in the world, expects to crush Washington's army of brave farmers. Thousands leave their plows and pick up their muskets to fight against the redcoats.
King George III was the dominant European power in America, Canada, India, Australia, New Zealand, Egypt, and other countries. It was his job as a king to control his vast empire, including those treasonous colonists. He ignored their petitions for reconciliation. Finally, the colonists declared their grievances against the crown, including, "He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people." The colonists would face the biggest empire in the world to fight for independence.
Father's words were often called treason. Some said he was disloyal to the king. His conscience said, "Shh, be quiet, John. The king will hang you." Who was this man who challenged the power of King George III? He was my father. Our family farm was 8 miles south of Boston in Braintree. My wise mother, Abigail, strongly supported my father. I helped with chores and study. I can remember playing in the fields with my brothers.
Adams, born on the family farm in 1735, planned to be a farmer when he grew up. One day, his father decided to show him how difficult farming could be by taking him for a long, exhausting day of cutting thatch. That night, his father asked him if he still liked farming. "Yes," John insisted, even though it was very hard and very muddy. Fortunately, a good teacher helped John study hard and love books. He excelled at Harvard, became a good lawyer, and advised, "Always have a poet in your pocket."
As Father traveled about New England as a lawyer, we kept in touch with letters. Father insisted, "Let us dare to read, think, speak, and write." I was 7 years old in 1775 when the war started. One of my earliest memories is climbing up nearby Penn's Hill in June to watch the Battle of Bunker Hill. Mother and I saw the smoke rising from Charlestown. Over the countrysides, the cannons boomed, louder than the muskets had at Lexington or Concord just 2 months before. That famous shot heard round the world had marked the war's beginning, April 19, 1775.
The American militia surrounded the British in Boston. They decided to tighten the siege by putting troops and 6 cannons on top of a hill in Charlestown. From there, they could fire across the harbor into Boston and at the British ships. When the British saw this, they opened fire with 128 cannons from their ships and set fire to Charlestown. June 17th, 3,000 British soldiers made a frontal attack up the hill against the well-fortified 2,000 patriots. The men held their fire until they could see the whites of their eyes. Twice the redcoats were driven back. On the third attack, the Americans ran out of ammunition, retreating to Cambridge. The British were shocked that farmers could stand up to highly trained troops.
General Washington called a war council to help win the Indians to the Patriots' side. At his headquarters in Cambridge, Washington hosted a dinner, including chiefs and warriors of the Caughnawaga Indians in full dress. The chiefs were wondrous polite and offered their services to the Patriots.
The Caughnawaga Indians were loyal to Washington during the entire war. At a dinner party at Washington's headquarters, Washington introduced the Indians to Adams as one of the Grand Council Fire from Philadelphia. The National Park maintains Washington's remarkable first headquarters, also known as the Longfellow House, once a Grand Tory home, but abandoned at the start of the war. And the Kanawha Indians are honored today at the Smithsonian American Indian Museum in Washington, D.C.
On the long road back to Congress in Philadelphia, Father wrote a list of what needed to be done, including writing a Declaration of Independence. He was warned to be quiet, but Adams declared, "Sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish, I am with my country." Father was brave, but timed his debate carefully. He saw the Congress was divided. Most people were afraid of breaking away from Great Britain. The atmosphere was tense. Time was wasting. Father, as the leader of the True Blue, urged that a complete break was the only way for America. Had the king already sent a huge fleet across the Atlantic? Would the king hang everyone involved? Father had told us always to excel, and now it was his turn. His conscience said, "It's time. Speak up, John." Father's clear voice filled the hall with rapid reason. He stood in Congress and stated, "We shall be driven to the necessity of declaring ourselves independent, and treaties to be proposed to foreign powers together with a Declaration of Independence." People were beginning to listen.
What made him such a valuable leader, risking his life for the service of his country? Adams, second only to Washington, was persistent, fearless, and completely dedicated to freedom. Imagine him setting off on his horse in the middle of winter to ride nearly 400 miles to Philadelphia. Once at Independence Hall, he argued for hours for independence.
Mother, who was always Father's closest advisor, longed to hear of independence. She wrote to Father about her vision of America. And by the way, in the new code of laws, I desire you remember the ladies.
Abigail was a voice for women and an advisor for her husband. Educated and intelligent, she helped polish John's speeches and letters while caring for her home, family, and village.
With Father's support, Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence. It was a stormy day on July 2nd, 1776. During the final debate and voting. Surprisingly, many objected to the Declaration, and no one spoke in its defense. The State House was silent, except for the rain and thunder outside. Father's conscience said, "Who will speak up, John?" Father again made his argument in a positive, reasonable way. Jefferson said he spoke with the power of thought and expression that moved us from our seats. Indeed, he was the man to whom the country is most indebted. The vote was taken. None of the 13 colonies voted against independence. Jefferson gave Father the credit for being there every hour, fighting for every word. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
The Committee of Five, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman, presented the Declaration to the full Congress. All of the 56 delegates signed.
On July 3rd, 1776, Father wrote to Mother, "My best, dearest, worthiest, wisest friend in this world, and all my children. Yesterday the greatest question was decided which was ever debated in America, and a greater perhaps never was or will be decided among men. A resolution was passed without one dissenting colony, that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival, pomp and parade with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations, from one end of the continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore."
Adams couldn't contain his exuberance for the Declaration. In a letter to Abigail, July 3rd, he wrote, "It will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. You will think me most transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this Declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom, I see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth the means."
When the Declaration was read aloud in Philadelphia, Father reported, the bells rang all day and almost all night. Even the chimes chimed away.
John Adams' patriotic work was only beginning. He sat on 90 congressional committees and chaired 25, including the Board of War. He gave his life to America as a son of liberty, foreign diplomat, vice president, second president, and more.
We hurried to Boston to hear the proclamation read for the first time. Mother described it well in her letter to Father. The troops appeared under arms, and all the inhabitants assembled. When Colonel Crafts read the proclamation, great attention was given every word. The bells rang, the privateers fired, the cannon were discharged, and every face appeared joyful. After dinner, the king's coat of arms were taken down from the State House, and every vestige of him from every place in which it appeared, and burnt in King Street. Thus ends the royal authority in this state, and all the people shall say, Amen. Through courage and hard work, John Adams' voice was heard in Braintree, Boston, Philadelphia, Paris, London, and beyond. His voice is still heard round the world. Independence forever.
I hope this story warms your patriotic heart as it always does mine. It's been said, where words fail, music speaks. Our mission is the combination of symphony music, a compelling story, and fine art to bring history alive for all ages. Now, let's sample more of John and Abigail's fascinating letters, reflecting their close relationship and steadfast love. Letter from Abigail to John, December 30th, 1773, Weymouth. John and Abigail live in Boston with their 4 small children, Nabby, John Quincy, Charles, and Thomas. Abigail has gone off to visit her parents in Weymouth. Quote, Alas, how many snowbanks divide thee and me, and warmest wishes to see thee will not melt one of them. I never left so large a flock of little ones before. My daily thoughts and nightly slumbers visit thee and thine. I feel gratified with the imagination at the close of the day in seeing the little flock around you, inquiring, When will Mamma come home? As they often do for thee in thy absence. Your affectionate Abigail.
A letter from John to Abigail, July 1st, 1774, York, Maine. John is finishing up his duties as a circuit lawyer just before heading to Philadelphia to serve in the First Continental Congress. Quote, I will not willingly see blockheads. Yes, patriots, you heard me right, blockheads, whom I have a right to despise, elevated above me and insolently triumphing over me. Nor shall knavery, through any negligence of mine, get the better of honesty, nor ignorance of knowledge, nor folly of wisdom, nor vice of virtue. I must entreat you, my dear partner, in all the joys and sorrows, prosperity and adversity of my life, to take a part with me in the struggle. I pray God for your health, entreat you to rouse your whole attention to the family, the stock, the farm, the dairy.
Letter from Abigail to John, August 19th, 1774, Braintree. John has been gone for 9 days on his long trip to Philadelphia. Quote, The great distance between us makes the time very long to me. It seems already a month since you left. A great anxiety I feel for my country, for you, and for your family renders the day tedious and the night unpleasant. The rocks and quicksands appear upon every side. The little flock remember Papa and kindly wish to see him. So does your most affectionate Abigail.
Letter from John to Abigail, August 28, 1774, Princeton. John is nearing Philadelphia in a stagecoach, including his good friend and cousin, Samuel Adams, who is a delegate to Congress from Massachusetts. They visited Princeton University that day. Quote, I received your kind letter at New York, and it is not easy for you to imagine the pleasure it has given me. I am anxious for our perplexed, distressed province. Hope they will be directed into the right path. Let me entreat you, my dear, to make yourself as easy and quiet as possible. Resignation to the will of heaven is our only resource in such dangerous times. I have the strongest hope that we shall see a clearer sky, a better time. The education of our children is never out of my mind. Train them to virtue, habituate them to industry, activity, and spirit. I am, with the tenderest affection and concern, your wandering John.
Letter from Abigail to John, October 16th, 1774, Braintree. After 2 months in Philadelphia, John is almost ready to return home. Quote, My much loved friend, I must not express to you at 300 miles distance how ardently I long for your return. I have some very miserly wishes and cannot consent to your spending 1 hour in town until I have had you 12. The idea plays about my heart, unnerves my hand while I write, awakens all the tender sentiments that years have increased and matured. I rejoice in the favorable account you give me of your health. May it be continued to you.
Letter from John to Abigail, May the 2nd, 1775, Hartford. After visiting the battle sites of Lexington and Concord, John rides his horse to Philadelphia to serve on the Second Continental Congress. He knows there is no turning back. Quote, I am often concerned for you and the babes. Many fears and jealousies and imaginary dangers will be suggested to you, but I hope you will not be impressed by them. In case of real danger, fly to the woods with our children. Give my tenderest love to them all. John.
Letter from Abigail to John, August 29th, 1776, Boston. Abigail is spending a summer visit at her aunt's house in Boston, while John works on the war effort in Philadelphia. Quote, I wish for peace and tranquility. All my desires and all my ambitions are to be esteemed and loved by my partner, to join with him in the education and instruction of our little ones, to sit under our own vines in peace, liberty, and safety. Adieu, my dearest friend, soon, soon return to your most affectionate.
Letter from John to Abigail, January 1st, 1795, Philadelphia, 20 years later. John is in his second term as vice president and alone in Philadelphia. Abigail remains in Braintree, running the farm. Quote, my dearest friend, I wish you a happy new year and a repetition of happy New Year's as long as time shall endure. I hope we shall have good news from all our family, although we cannot be all together. Adieu.
Letter from Abigail to John, January 15th, 1797, Quincy. John has just been elected president. Quote, the cold has been more severe than I can ever before recollect. It has frozen the ink in my pen and chilled the blood in my veins, but not the warmth of my affection for him for whom my heart beats with unabated ardor through all the changes and vicissitudes of life. In the still calm of Peacefield and the turbulent scenes in which he is about to engage, the prospect of which excite neither vanity nor pride, but a mixture of anxiety and solicitude, which soften but do not swell the heart. Yours most affectionately.
Letter from John to granddaughter, Carolyn Smith. Our last letter is from John when he's in his 80s and responding to Caroline, Nabby's daughter. You are not singular in your suspicions that you know but little. The longer I live, the more I read, the more patiently I think, and the more anxiously I inquire, the less I seem to know. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. This is enough. So questions and so answers your affectionate grandfather.
If you'd like to read more of John and Abigail's letters, they're available online at the Massachusetts Historical Society and collected in many books such as My Dearest Friend, John Adams, the lavish 7-part miniseries in 2008 chronicles the life of the Addams family from the Boston Massacre in 1770 through the years of war and peace to their final days at Peacefield. The highly popular HBO series stars Paul Giamatti and Laura Linney. The movie is based on David McCullough's Pulitzer Prize-winning biography. He was on site to help guide the accuracy of the production. After decades of service to America, at home and abroad, John and Abigail moved back to Quincy to a retirement homestead in 1788. Yet, a life of farming like Washington desired was not to be when John was elected vice president in 1789 for 8 years, followed by serving as the second president of the United States. Finally, by 1801, he could return to Peacefield to read, think, speak, and write when he wasn't farming. You can still see the beautiful lilac bushes that Abigail planted so many years ago and enjoy summer flower gardens around the home. And you can see the little stone library that was built to keep their thousands of books right next to the side garden. This medieval-style stone library has more than 12,000 volumes in 12 different languages cared for by the National Park Service for endless years to come. Note the desk in the far back where John wrote the Massachusetts Constitution. Boston Landmarks Orchestra's free-for-all concerts are Wednesday nights at the Memorial Hat Shell in July and August. Bring a lawn chair, watch the sunset over the Charles River, and enjoy classical music on a summer night. We have an amazing tapestry of history deep in our culture. Find a child, a grandchild, a neighbor, and share the story of John and Abigail. Your interest in American history will ignite their love of our rich heritage, and someday they'll share the stories with their children. If you reach and teach a child, you'll help to preserve what John and Abigail and thousands of others lived and died for: independence forever. Huzzah for true blue patriots. Hey, we hope this story has brought some joy to your home and warmed your hearts. I'm passionate about John and Abigail's story and never get tired of it. It's been shared from Boston to Indiana to California and beyond as a beloved, vital American saga. If you want to discuss this patriotic couple or other topics in history, or if you think of questions after this program, get in touch with me. My email is carlson@schoolmasterpress.com. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. So thank you very much for listening.